Welcome to iCaveAnswers, where I answer your Apple questions. In today's iCaveAnswers, we will be talking about when will the Apple event announcement happen, talking sponsorships, AirPods Max for audiophiles, iMac leaks, how my 4K Mac Mini setup works, Apple Watch music handoffs, and upgrading older iMacs. And if you've got a question you would like answered in a future video, please leave it down in the comments with hashtag iCaveAnswers.
Your Apple questions answered. It's iCaveAnswers with iCave Dave.
I'm iCave Dave, and every weekday I do a news show on YouTube about Apple stuff. And we've always been answering your questions, and we get quite a lot of them now, so they've got their own show. So if you've got a question that you would like me to answer about anything Apple, all you need to do is ask me the question down in the comments using the hashtag iCaveAnswers, and I will answer it for you. As long as we're all good with that, let's get on with it. The first question today comes from Jim McInnes-Boylan. Hi Dave, when and how do you expect Apple to announce the March event if it's on the 23rd? Great show. Why, thank you Jim. In the past it's always been announced 1 week before the event, so if we are expecting the event to happen next Tuesday on the 23rd, I think tomorrow. Obviously I'm recording this on today, whatever today is, but it's Monday. I can't maths, so it's 8 days before the 23rd. But yeah, we're expecting the announcement tomorrow. There will probably be a hash flag that goes up, so if you put in hashtag Apple event on Twitter, it will throw something on at the end. Whether that's a coloured Apple logo or whether it is something different this time, we will see. If it's a little circle, then let's assume that we're going to be seeing some AirTags. Thanks for the question. Next up, Souvik Mukherjee asks, hashtag iCaveAnswers. Why don't you want to do sponsored videos? Hashtag hit the subscribe button, hashtag make 5k. What on earth makes you think I don't want to do sponsored videos? I would be delighted to have some sponsors for the show, so if you are watching this and you would like to sponsor the show, you are very welcome. Get in touch. The email address is in the YouTube about page, but it's also david@sangwells.co.uk. Hit me up. More than happy to take on sponsors. Just bring me something that's vaguely relevant and we'll have a chat. Also from Souvik Mukherjee, do you recommend that audiophiles buy the current $549 AirPods Max now or wait for the next generation of the product? Okay, so a couple of things with that one. So number one, we don't know that there's another generation on the way. We have heard rumours that there is a lighter weight, kind of sportier version kind of in the works, that has been in the works since well before all of the rest of the stuff has been going on. So like since before we saw the reality of the AirPods Max, and probably actually before we even saw the renders of them from John Prosser. He was talking about a possibly $349 kind of price point for a sports version of these. Now, that is exactly the price point that I think Beats Studio 3s sit at, which kind of makes a lot of sense. They are a plastic, fairly premium, but not, particularly audiophile focused headphone. Now, the difference with the AirPods Max is that they contain a couple of H2 chips, I believe it is, one in each ear cup, which decodes the audio and then also does computational audio. Each of those is like a 10-core chip that you've got on either side of your ears. And I believe they've got something like 8 microphones on the outside and a couple on the inside, so it kind of tunes everything to make sure that it works with your ears, as well as doing really good active noise cancellation and transparency mode. There's a lot of technology that goes into these things. At the moment, the biggest issue with them seems to be that because they had metal ear cups, that they got a bit of condensation going on the inside. So even if the lower priced ones, or the next generation at least, were already on the way, I feel like Apple will have put a hold on those until they've made sure that they can resolve this issue, especially if they were still going to go with aluminium ear cups. I think that might be the biggest stumbling block. I think that might delay whatever comes next, because Apple will want to make sure that that's fixed before they get to the next issue. Other than that, we don't actually know that there's another one coming out. We just know that they were developing other stuff. So I wouldn't say to hold on for that. And from the audiophile point of view, these headphones sound really great. They are not particularly audiophile level headphones. They are computational audio. They adjust the audio. So they're not kind of the audiophile, certainly in the way that audiophile has existed in the past. And we're also using compressed audio as opposed to completely uncompressed stuff. Now you can put uncompressed through them over the cable, which is $35, which everyone complained about. but it's $35 and audiophiles spend hundreds on cables, so I don't see that that's actually an issue from that point of view. At the moment, they're not really an audiophile product. They're a very good product and a very high-end consumer product, but not really into that audiophile arena per se. Next up, Marcin Kowalczyk asks, iCaveAnswers, do you think that we will get more iMac/ARM leaks before the release? Yes, I think we probably will get some, but I don't think we will actually see a huge amount of what is going to be coming. And the reason that I say that is I'm basing it on what happened with Apple Silicon, because we had a lot of rumours before the M1 Max came out, but no one had been able to confirm what the processor was called. We actually had someone in our comment section that managed to guess it, but it was very much a guess. There was no real kind of knowledge of what that processor was going to be called. Even up to the day, people were expecting it to still be an A14X, the same as we would get in an iPad Pro. Macs seem to have a lot less leaks than iPhones. Now, I don't know if that's because they have better security at these places, or if they are just because they're much larger, they are harder to kind of do any kind of smuggling or taking images of, or if it's purely that there's not as much interest. There certainly is on our channel. There's probably more interest for Macs than there is for iPhones and stuff on our channel. But if you think back as well, we had no idea what the 2019 Mac Pro refresh was going to look like until it arrived on the stage. And I think because it's such an aggressive cheese grater look, people kind of thought it was a joke. It harks back to that G5 early Mac Pro look. I don't think anyone had a clue what the trash can Mac Pro was going to look like until it was announced on stage, because they announced it quite far in advance as well. But actually, I don't think we've had any real kind of substantial leaks for what Macs are going to be before they actually arrive. Now, we predicted the Mac Mini with Apple Silicon before it happened, and very few other places did, but there were no leaks coming out. Like, don't get me wrong, we were not leaking it. We were saying, I think that would make sense, and then it did make sense. I think we will get some more information, and it will probably come via John Prosser or Mark Gurman. I don't think we'll have the full story until we see it on the stage. Apple seems to be very tight-lipped around their Macs. Don't know why, but I like it, because I like to have a bit of a surprise. Michael Wright asks, I've recently gotten an M1 Mac Mini, really wanting a widescreen monitor setup like yours, targeting something wide with a decent colour rendering for Final Cut Pro and Lightroom. Can you share your experience with getting two displays to play nicely with the Mini? What's the model number of that Visio panel you've got? And actually our next question as well from Greg West, we will answer these together. iCaveAnswers, Dave, you mentioned using a TV screen with a Mac Mini, and I'd love some details about that. I'm a photographer, so need quality colour rendering. Currently using an older Apple monitor, but looking at a 32-inch BenQ for the Mini. However, there have been a lot of problems years ago with the LGs not waking up or having other problems with MacBook Pros. What makes a monitor compatible with a computer besides the obvious connection requirements? Are there relevant differences between a television and computer monitors? And how do you manage the lack of ports on a television when connecting? Thank you. Cool, so I will run you through, first of all, what I've actually got over here. So it's not a Visio panel, actually, it's a JVC. So I basically decided when I moved up, because I moved from a 27-inch iMac, 2013 model, which we'll be talking about actually quite soon, to the M1 Mac Mini as my main kind of editing station, basically. And I started off by using the 40-inch TV that's at the top here, which is a 1080p panel. And obviously 40 inches of 1080p this close to you is not ideal because, you know, you can see pixels and stuff like that. But I tend to use that top display for watching a bit of media, like I'll put YouTube up on there while I'm working on other stuff, or I will use it for like file windows. So like the Finder will sit up there if I've got different files that I'm bringing into an edit. This top display, by the way, I also picked up secondhand. I think it was about £40, and it was from about 2 miles down the road. Jumped in the car, went and collected it, no problems at all. The bottom panel, which is also 40 inches, this one was brand new, and it was a JVC display. It is an Android TV, actually. There is an Amazon Fire version of it that you can get on Amazon. I will include a link down in the description, I think. hopefully. But I found that it's really, really nice, and the fact that I can use it at 4K at full resolution, so I basically put the scaling to more stuff all the way up, so it's actually using it as pixel for pixel rather than pixel doubling, which is what the iMacs at 5K do. They actually display as if they're a 2560 by 1440 display, even though they're like a 5K panel, which to me feels a bit wasteful because I prefer to have more stuff on my screen. If I can have basically 4 1080p displays worth of stuff on here, then that reduces the problems that you get of only having a certain number of screens. Color accuracy, I am not in a position to particularly comment well on this. I do have a colorimeter knocking around here somewhere that was given to me by a photographer friend of mine who covered our wedding and things like that, and he is another Apple fan and had got some old stuff that he just didn't need, so I will try and pull that out. The problem I have is that this colorimeter only runs in 32-bit, so it doesn't run on Apple Silicon, which is a problem. So I might have to find a way of emulating that. But in terms of the sharpness and stuff, it's been absolutely fine. The only weird kind of display thing that we get with it is you do get some kind of flickering on certain greys on websites, and some textures do kind of, you get a little bit of movement in the pixels, which isn't ideal, but I don't mind because this is a massive screen and it looks really great. The other thing with it is it doesn't automatically power on. Neither of these automatically power on when I wake up my Mac. This might be what you were referring to. I believe some of the more modern TVs do. This one's a couple of years old in terms of model age. This one's super old. But it doesn't really matter to me. It just means when I come and sit down at my desk, I just turn on the 2 displays and then move my mouse and everything's cool. So that's not an issue for me. They also auto power off after like 4 hours, even when you're using them, because it doesn't think you're doing anything different because you're not adjusting stuff on the set. So those are a few kind of compromises that you get with this, but in general, in terms of value, this whole setup here for the displays, the keyboard, like let's assume that I bought the keyboards, the 2 displays that I've got and the Mac Mini cost me under £1,000, and I think that's a pretty good bargain compared to pretty much any iMac. I think it's a really good price point, and obviously it's an M1, so it's fast. It's so quick, and I just absolutely plow through all the work I need to do. So it's been a really good investment for me. In terms of color accuracy, I can't comment on it because I genuinely don't know. The other kind of thing that you would need to think about is obviously with a TV, you're typically going to get 60 Hertz, or in the UK quite often 50 Hertz. These are 60, I think. You're going to be limited normally to lower refresh rates. So if you want to do any sort of gaming on them and that kind of thing, then you're going to have to step up quite a bit in your TVs. And then overscan is the other thing, but I haven't had that problem with these. It's kind of just calibrated itself. So yeah, those are the only kind of concerns that you might have, but I'm really happy with it. I'm a really happy camper with the setup that we have here. Oh, the only other thing that you don't get, obviously, when you use TVs and a Mac Mini is you don't have a webcam on it, which is why we now have this arm at the back here, which has got a iPhone mount on it. And I use my iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is what we are filming on today. That sits in it. It's also got a Rode mic on the top, which just plugs straight into the lightning connector. And then it also has a little light that sits on there. So if I'm using it for FaceTime and stuff, it looks a lot better than it would do if you were just using the kind of 720p webcam that you would get on an iMac, other than the iMac Pro that they've discontinued. Thaumator asks, will Apple enable handing off of music from Apple Watch to HomePod? Both Apple Watch Series 6 and the HomePod Mini have the U1 chip, so technically it should be possible. Maybe it's too niche of a use case for Apple to bother, but I'd like the ability to hand off music after listening to music from my watch. Which of the patents we've seen do you think Apple will use in the future, such as the Watch U1 chip uses for exercise, AR, VR for more interactive experience, gesture controls and car use? So very interesting. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but let's start at the beginning. So the first thing that you asked me about was handoff from the watch to the HomePods. I think you're right, it is a very niche thing. I don't think there's a huge number of people that actually probably use the watch specifically for music, but if I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments. if you go out for runs with your watch and you don't take your iPhone with you, and you just pop your earpods in, I'd be interested to know, because that's not something that I've actually done. I always have my phone with me anyway, because I don't go for runs. But yeah, if the Series 6 has got the U1 chip in it, there's no reason they couldn't do that. But also, with the other watches, they could do it, because prior to the, I think it was the 14.2 update, they just used Bluetooth for the handoff anyway, so it was quite easy to do that. So I don't see why they couldn't do that. It might be too niche for them to worry about, but Apple tends to like to hook everything up, so if it can be done, it probably will be done. So other than that, which patents do we think will be used using the U1? The exercise stuff, absolutely. They've already started doing more stuff with just the watch for Apple Fitness Plus. So there's things like the time to walk that's been added. There's a few other features. But I do think that we might start to see Apple Watch being more integrated into things like motion control gaming, because the Apple remote, for the Apple TV remote, has actually got accelerometers in it, so you can use it as like a Wiimote kind of thing. I don't know how precise it is, but certainly the stuff in the Apple Watch would be better for that. Location stuff, I think we might start to see U1 kind of locating you within your house. So maybe if you're moving through the house and you've got HomePods in multiple rooms, you could actually have your music follow you and turn off in the rooms that you're not in, because it feels like that's the kind of thing that Apple would like to be able to do, where it kind of, you don't even notice it coming on in other rooms, but the music follows you around, perhaps. So that could be something. It could also use the U1 chips in the watch to decide who's in the room, in order to decide where it should read out your text messages, perhaps. Something like that. Don't necessarily want all your text messages being read out when the room is full of people, but you know, that's the kind of thing. In terms of the cars, it's already being used for car unlocking, and it could well be something that is used maybe for CarPlay in future. If we get portless iPhones, maybe Bluetooth CarPlay could be a thing, and it uses your watch as a kind of bridge, maybe. Don't think it would need to, because it could do it directly from the phone, but there'll be stuff like that where you'll be able to get into your car and it will know from your watch who's got into the car, and maybe adjust your seats to the right positions, all that kind of thing. I think Tesla does that with which phone has unlocked the car, so that could definitely be another thing that they could do. Next up, Mark Anderson. Mark Anderson asks, "Hi mate, question on upgrading a 2013 iMac, and some videos mentioned RAM and SSD, and sometimes internal replacement or running external. Could you help clarify that, please?" Why, yes. So my 2013 iMac is sitting right here. That is what I've edited every show on until we got the M1 Mac Mini. And I have to be honest, when I first bought it, I was massively disappointed, because I'd been working on a 2011 11-inch MacBook Air before, and I thought to myself, right, I'm going to get an iMac, it's going to be my powerhouse, it's going to be my editing rig, and in all honesty, it was a lot slower than my 2-year-older little tiny MacBook Air 11-inch, and I could not work out why, and it was because of the SSD. So the iMac that I bought was 8GB of RAM, a 1TB hard drive, spinning hard drive, no SSD, and it was the quad-core i5 3.2 GHz, and it's got a 2GB graphics card in it, so it felt like it should be okay, but it's that hard drive. That was just what slowed it down, and the reason that the MacBook Air still felt snappy was because SSD, everything runs really quickly, everything loads really quickly, even though it's only got 4GB of RAM. So what I did a couple of years ago is, in fact probably about 4 years ago now, I got an external SSD, slapped it on the back of the iMac, attached it with USB 3, so it's only on like USB A3, and went into recovery mode, installed the operating system onto that external drive, and booted from it. And that's what I've been doing for years, and it's worked really well. Now, there have been a couple of issues with it. Now, the biggest one being when I wanted to do boot camp, because boot camp couldn't see macOS installed on the internal drive, it then couldn't partition the internal drive, and it was just failing, and it wasn't telling me why. And when I ended up finally calling Apple support, they were like, oh yeah, don't do that. That's never going to work, running it on an external drive. I was like, well, I've been doing it for years, but obviously that was the issue. So I ended up having to install macOS on the internal drive and then do boot camp, and then I could boot back into the other drive then. So there are a couple of little quirks to it, but in general, it's been really solid. I think I've had 2 or 3 times in those few years that the external hard drive has for some reason unmounted itself, and that would be like because the cables got pulled or something like that. So you do have to be kind of careful with it like that, but it can work. So your mileage may vary. Make sure your backups are all good, and make sure that you're backing up your work until you're happy with it. But it's worked for me. In terms of RAM, you can definitely do that. There is, on the 27-inch models at least, there is a RAM door underneath the stand which you can pop open and you can upgrade the RAM. So I did that myself on this one, and we have been running it on 24 gigs of RAM for the past probably 6 years, and that's worked out really well too. So didn't replace the original RAM, but just filled up the other 2 slots with a bit more. So hopefully that helps. I mean, the best way to do the install if you want to run on an external drive is to boot into recovery mode by holding Command R, and then you can basically say reinstall it, and you install it onto an external drive, and everything's peachy. So that's it for this iCave Answers. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have a question for me, then let me know down in the comments. Use hashtag iCaveAnswers and I will answer it in a future show for you. And if you do decide to ask a question, make sure you have subscribed and rung the notification bell so you don't miss when I answer your question. Because the last thing you want to do is ask me an awesome question, get a cool shout out on the show, and then not know that it happened. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.